A little less than a week ago, we stood here, the Levaya, V'Rav Gain Ramesha, Zecher Tzaddik Kosh Tzavacha. The difficulty of a Hesped, Shas Levaya, is obvious. However, as time goes on, one understands the depth of the loss. Depth of the loss to Klal Yisrael, depth of the loss to the yeshiva, and the depth of the loss to all the individuals whose lives he impacted. It becomes even more difficult. Koshem Yisas Tzadikim Kisreifas Beis Elokeinu. The purpose of Beis Elokeinu, Yosli Mikdosh V'Shechanti B'Socham. The essence of the Beis Mikdosh is to enable us to connect to the Shekhinah. However, there are people whose lives are lived on a level that through dealing with them, we also connect with the Shekhinah because of the madreg of their lives. And when these people leave, our ability to connect to the Shekhinah becomes drastically reduced. That's what Chazal meant. Koshem Yisat Tzadikim Kisreifas Beis Elokeinu. Among the HYD Skula represented that, who lived their lives by bringing the Shekhinah to this world, was Moshe. During the Hespedim that was said at the Levaya, during the stories that were said during the Shiva, there was a story said that at the time when Moshe became a chosin, and his shver, Rav Berman, Zecher Tzaddik Kosh Tzavacha, met my Rebbe Zechron Levracha, told him, grandfather, being Marbi B'Shvach on his grandson, told him in the Parshas Ba'aleschach, Kodesh Baruch Hu talks to Aaron and Miriam, says, Lo chein avdi Moshe, v'chol beisi ne'emanu, pe'al pe'adaber bo. Question is, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu have to begin Lo Chein Avdi Moshe? It's enough to say, Pe'al pe'al daber bo mara lo b'chidos, u'tzmos Hashem yabit. The answer is, it's not that Moshe Rabbeinu was just a bigger Novi than other people. That he saw the Tmuras Hashem and there's a sparkle ha'me'ira and a sparkle she'ena me'ira. No. He's saying, Lo chein avdi Moshe, Moshe Rabbeinu is on a totally different madrega, just totally different. And he told him, it's not that my grandson is a bigger, more choshev bacha. It's in a totally different madrega. What do you mean by that? This week's parsha, Vayetze Yankiv mi Beersheva, Vayelech Harona. So Rashi tells us, what does it mean, Vayetze Yankiv mi Beersheva, Vayelech Harona, when a tzaddik leaves an ear? So it's nikya that tzaddik left the ear. upon a ziva, upon a hadra. And the question is, Yitzchak Avinu was still there. And the answer is very, very simple. Each tzaddik is unique in his midas, in his hashpah, in the hashras hashchina that he brings to this world. One is not a clone of the other. They're unique, their own madregas, their own nisyonis, their own madregas. And when that tzaddik leaves, hashras hashchina that he brought by his madregas, hashras hashchina that he brought by his midas, by his avodah, that's chosed no matter how many other tzaddikim there are. It was a Yitzchak Avinu. It was the Beis Medrash Hashem v'Ever. But still, that tzaddik is unique. And his hashpah is gone. His avodah is gone. His hashras hashchina is gone. His example to others is gone. Upon a ziva, upon a hadra. He's unique. He's special. Vayetze Yaakov Beersheva. Yaakov left Yitzchak Avinu's house. And he went, before he could go to Beis Lovon, he spent 14 years in the Yeshiva of Shem V'Ever. Why do you have to spend 14 years in the Yeshiva of Shem V'Ever? The answer is, Yaakov Avinu was Yerush everything from Yitzchak Avinu, everything. But the time came for Yaakov Avinu to make his own, to internalize everything. Once heard from a Rebbe Zechrona Levacha on the Posuk in Re'eh, Bonim atim Hashem Elokeichem, lo tizkoldudu, lo simu korcha v'neinechem lametz, ki am kodesh ato Hashem Elokeichem. And Rashi says, Ushas atzmocha me'avosecha, Yod uv'chobocha Hashem. Says, every Jew, there's two levels of Kedusha. There's the one who's Yerush from his office. But then he takes that and he makes uv'chobocha Hashem. He creates his own. Yaakov Avinu was in Yitzchak Avinu's house and he learned all the Torahs. He was the Yishtam Yershiv Oholim. Time came for Yaakov to go out to the world. He had to internalize everything, be by himself. There's a big difference between the Beis Medrash of Yitzchak Avinu, the Beis Medrash of Shem V'Ever. They were both in Beersheva. Yitzchak Avinu's house was pasuach to everything, people coming and going. Shem V'Ever was a small group of people involved in their own avodah, in their own growth. After Yosefeg, everything from a Yaakov Avinu, you have to put it all together to make your own uv'chobocha Hashem. Moshe was Yosefeg so much from the Yerush's office. As I mentioned in my Hesped, the Levaya, his Zayda would say, it was Meir Nishvacher Shel Talmidov. When he got to his grandson, Moshe, he would say, this one got this, and this one got this from me, and this one got this from me. But Moshe is me. Moshe was his hemshech. He saw everything that Reb Chaim put into my Zayda Zechrona Levracha. My Zayda put in to his son, Zechrona Levracha, and he put into his grandson. He saw it all coming into fruition. That shleimus. To take all of that, and all that was put into him. and to build himself to what he could become. He put himself in different places to be Yonik here and Yonik there, to achieve that shleimus that he wanted. Chaim was unique. In that Hemshech HaDoros, when b'meshech of the week, I was thinking, what was it so unique that established that straight link from Reb Moshe to his great-great-grandfather, Reb Chaim, through my Zayda Zechrono Levrocha, through his grandfather Zechrono Levrocha. Reb Chaim was unique, not just he was the guy in Ador. There were a lot of guys in him. Reb Chaim was unique, not that he was the Bal Chesed Hador. There were a lot of Bal Chesed. Reb Chaim was unique, not only was he Yirei Shamayim, Reb Chaim was unique because he was Shleimus. Reb Chaim took it all and went to the extreme. It was Torah to the extreme. It was Avodah to the extreme. It was Chasodim to the extreme, and in all Mikshachas, Shleimus. And that is that uniqueness that set Reb Chaim above. It's not that he was the bigger guy than everyone. Of course he was. Not that he was the bigger Yirei Shamayim, yes. Not the bigger Balei Chesed, yes. But what set him unique was that shleimus. He took it all. It was all one Torah. It was not parts of the Torah. It was all one Torah. And that he passed in the Hemshech HaDoros. When Yankov Avinu was laying there, and there's the Chalom. Hinei Malach Elokim Olim V'Yordim Bo. They would go up and they would come down. And Rashi tells us in the name of Chazal that because Yavis Yoiknei of Yankov Avinu was Chokik and in the Chisei HaChavod, they were comparing Yankov Avinu down and Yankov Avinu up. What does it mean that the Yoiknei of Yankov Avinu was Chokik in the Chisei HaChavod? So the Rambam says in the Nevuchim that the four Chayas, the Aryeh, it doesn't mean there was an Aryeh there. He said, no. There was a human being who was Doimele Aryeh. There was a human being who was Doimele. And then there was the human being who's the human being. The perfection, the shleimus of a human being. Yankov Avinu, the B'chir Shabbavis. That was the human being. The shleimus of Yankov Avinu. Yankov Avinu, after being Yitzchak Avinu's house, and then spending 14 years in Beis Medrash Yishem V'Yev achieved shleimus. She'ifa for shleimus. And then he was ready to go to the world, to engage a Lavan. Moshe was a sholem. Every part of him, he wasn't one part. Wasn't just Torah. There are a lot of Gainim. There are people who master Shas like Moshe did. Shas. The people who master Nigla. And there are people who, together with the mastery of Nigla that they have, marry Master Nister as he did. But he took it to the maximum. His Torah was a miksha achas with everything else. It wasn't just limud Torah. There are many masmidim. What was unique about Reb Chaim. He trained himself. He trained his children. That limud Torah was automatic to them, just as breathing is. You don't have to think whether you breathe or not. That's automatically what you do and who you are. It's part of you. There's some people who do a lot of learning, but it never becomes the yesod of their being, part of them. So that when they walk down the street, there's divrei Torah in their minds. When they walk down the street, it's who and what they are. And there's not possible to have their minds deviate from Torah. It was a unique capacity. Reb Chaim had, and he passed off over to his two sons. And that uniqueness, Moshe was a masmid otzim. The posuk Pumei Gersa. But it's more than he did something a lot. That was him. That was the metzius of his life. The posuk Pumei Gersa, because just like a human being doesn't stop breathing, because that's what life is. For him, Torah was life. That is, he was one of the HYD scholar who achieved that madrega that Reb Chaim trained himself and trained his sons to be a metzius of Torah. Of course, through that, it means there's Yegiya Atzuma, till you're sholeit in every part of Torah. L'shlita gemur ad hasof. That is the shleimus that you get in Torah. But there are people who are sholem, who achieve the maximum in different areas. Rebbe Elchanan once said about the Chafetz Chaim that if a person is a regular size and a very long hand, he's not a godel in any way, he's a balmum. Greatness means you're great in everything. A shleimus. Avodah. People emphasized his diktuk b'mitzvahs. His diktuk b'mitzvahs was lahafli in two ways. Not what most people think is diktuk b'mitzvahs. First of all, most of the super medartikim and mitzvahs want to make sure that everyone knows about it. Part of his hatznei alechas. That was the metzius of his being, was hatznei alechas. Was his diktuk b'mitzvahs. Ma'izedi zechreinu levracha. The Rambam in Sefer Mitzvahs u'La'ovdo. Rambam says, says La'ovdo is mitzvahs, La'ovdo is Talmud. Says there's a mitzvah to take a lulav, but another mitzvah La'ovdo, to use a lulav as a derech avodah. It's a mitzvah to learn and to be preoccupied with Torah, but there is using the mitzvah to learn Veda. Very few people achieve that their tefillah is avodah, their mitzvahs are avodah, their limud Torah is avodah, and there's a shivisi Hashem l'negdi somid in everything that they do and in every living moment of their lives. That brings to shleimus. His diktuk b'mitzvahs lahafli, because it went down to the depths of his being in his hatznei aleches. This was the depth of his derech avodah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Lahafli as a derech avodah. It's a derech avodah. His midas. When my Zayda Zechreinu Levrocha came to Rav Cheslavich, Chaim in Rasein, and Reb Chaim told him what the tafkid of a Rav is to be a Bal Chesed. Chaim told him, Chaim is the Bal Chesed Ador. Chaim wanted that in his Matzeve, it should be written only one thing, Rav Chesed. That was the greatest achievement of his life. He told my Zayda Zechreinu Levrocha that he broke himself of all his midas to turn himself into the Bal Chesed that he wanted. Moshe was a Bal Chesed b'tivo, lahafli. But he also broke himself in a different way. Because the Bal Chesed b'tivo that's the nature of his being. But he has to give himself over to other people. And in all of Moshe's hatznei aleches, the Rebbetzin told me that when he took the Stella here, he told her that whatever Talmud asks him, he's going to do. He's misgaber on his shyness, his inwardness, to turn himself into a giver and a giver and a giver, because that's what he wanted to do, and that's what he thought was the right thing to do. And if it wasn't his teva to be an outward person, you have to make yourself into that, to be a Baal Chesed. Not that he had one shemetz kol shehu, anything but Chesed in him. But in order to let that Chesed out, he had to be misgaber on that midah of his shyness, his satznei aleches, to give and to give and to give. And everyone in this room knows that Moshe in Torah was a giver and giver and giver. He wasn't only a giver in Torah, he was a giver in everything. Despite his shyness, despite his quietness, his satznei aleches, misgaber in that midah to give and give and give and give, to force himself out to give and do it satznei aleches. Shleimus. Shleimus, that was Moshe Shleimus. Moshe's Avodah. Moshe's Avodah. Nothing stopped in his way to grow in his Avodah. If he thought by going to Manchester to be Meshamish, Manchester Rosh Hashiva, he would grow in his Avodah, and in Yom Kippur, when he was lifnei Hashem the whole day, he Kemalach Hashem Tzvakas, he gave a high madrege, he left his wife, he left his family, spent 40 days there in Manchester to be Meshamish, Manchester Rosh Hashiva, the higher degrees of Avodah. Nothing stood in his way. When he didn't do that anymore, so he put himself into Nister, because he felt with that he could grow in his Avodah. Shleimus. Shleimus. We live in a world, in a tkufa. People are proud that Baruch Hashem, but the medrash are filled. People learning, people steiging, people doing everything. The only ma'atim and ma'atim even think about shleimus. And even fewer of them try to achieve shleimus. And even fewer even get there. There were times when Yaakov Avinu thought he was a shalom already. He would stood all the nisyonis, and Beis Lavan came back after 22 years. Bishkish Yaakov Lashevas B'Shalva Miyad. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says no. You have more nisyonis, you have more growth. And it's only the last 17 years of Mitzrayim that HaKadosh tells us that he lived a life of Shalva because he achieved shleimus. Moshe was a shalom. And that, the shleimus of Reb Chaim and Reb Chaim's way, the shleimus of the previous doros he came from in their way, he took it and made it in his way. Yaakov Avinu wasn't Yitzchok. Yaakov Avinu wasn't Avram Avinu. Yaakov Avinu was Yaakov Avinu. Each one was try in his own way to take his tchunas and nefesh and his nisyonis and his growth and become their own shleimus. And Yaakov Avinu did it. That's why he was maimed the Yud Beis Shiftei Kah. He was a shalom. As I mentioned in Levaya, and the midah that motivated and drove him in all of that was his shalva, was his taharas hanefesh. There were no agendas to him. The Elokai neshama shenasata bi tahirahi ato yitzata. He was a holach yosher kamosh aso Elokim. The yashus, the emes. He took that Elokai neshama shenasata bi and took it all the way, and never deviated. Wherever he went, with all the distractions and everything around him, that Yashrus and that emes was his hallmark. And that kept him going in the path to Shleimus. That is the loss for Klal Yisrael. That's the loss for us in Yeshiva. We had a degem of Shleimus. We had an example of Shleimus. From the Mishpacha who was Zeicher and to Schus to be b'mchitzasa of an Adam Shalem. They were Zeicher. We in Yeshiva, we're in the Mechitza of an Adam Shalem. We were Zeicher. Now, Dodi Yorad Legano, Larugas Habayis and Liros Bagano Velilkal Sheshanim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that Shleimus and took it for himself. All the previous days, when that Neshama Tahira sent it to Shemayim, Mitoch Dusha V'Tahara, if it was Makabal and Malchus Shemayim was standing Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but Tefillah only Lifnei Hashem. And they took in front of the Kisei HaKavod and said, look HaKadosh Baruch Hu, look what came out of us. Look the Hemshech of our Deiris. Lamala B'Kodesh, all the Deiris. What we have to do is to take that example of Taharas HaNefesh and Shleimus and say, yes, it's possible. That has to be our goal. He left us a Yerusha. The Yerusha is, yes, it's possible. That's our goal. That's what we have to do. And I think at this point, I want to make another point, one final point. No one comes in a vacuum. The Medrash tells us that there's once a tzaddik who was married to tzaddikis, and they didn't have any children. And they decided we're not doing for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so they got divorced, and each one married someone else. He married a woman who was a Rasha, and she married a man who was a Rasha. She turned the man who was a Rasha into a tzaddik, and this woman who's a Rasha turned him into a Rasha. Mikan, says the Medrash, it comes from Hakol min Hoyisha. Moshe came from a home. And that home nurtured him. He married Neshus Chayil. Both together. The shleimus that he had. If I was reading in the whole week, he had this Rabbeim and that Rabbeim, yes. But it came from somewhere. It was produced by something and nurtured and helped. And that is something that people have to understand. Moshe was a Sholem, and his path to Shleimus, besides his Rabbeim, the women who helped him were an integral part of producing that Sholem. And we, at this point, have to use it as a degem, as an example, and build on it, and build and go more and more. Yeh Zechro Baruch.